Welcome back to the Rashi Nosh. I'm Pastor Matt.
And I'm Kara.
Thank you for joining with us. We're getting such positive comments on this particular program where we just take just a little nosh, just a little bite of Rashi, a medieval French rabbi that's kind of the basis of the most basic understanding of Jewish interpretation of the scripture. And this week, our Torah portion is called Vayera. This is when Abraham has some divine visitors, and there is some debate. Obviously, in Christian circles, we would say that this is God himself that visits. In Judaism, there are different strains of belief, obviously, because in non-Messianic circles, God being in a physical form is tricky. It's not a desirable thing to think in a lot of normative Judaism. We in the Messianic world and in the Christian world have no problem believing that this is God. But at least these are divine visitors. At least these are angelic visitors, if you don't want to look at this as God himself. But we see these particular visitors coming, and it says that Abraham is in front of his tent, in front of the opening of his tent in the heat of the day. And it talks about, in the Hebrew, it gives us the idea that the sun is especially hot that day. And what some of the commentators on the Torah say is there's a reason that God makes it extra hot, and that is so there wouldn't be travelers on the road that Abraham would want to be hospitable to. So to give him a rest from that. According to Jewish tradition, he is 3 days from his self-imposed circumcision, the day that is the worst of the pain. And this is why Rashi says here to visit the sick person. Rabbi Hama, the son of Hananiah, says, it was the 3rd day since his circumcision, and the Holy One, blessed be he, came and inquired about Abraham's welfare. So from here, we get this idea, if God is willing to visit Abraham in the time that he is in his pain, we're supposed to visit the sick person. It's interesting, when you visit someone that is sick or in pain, the Jewish tradition is you take 1/60th of their pain from them or their sickness from them. And so it's a way of bearing one another's burdens, as it talks about in the New Testament. We have had occasion, as being in ministry, being in a pastor's home, of visiting people when they're sick, visiting people if they've just had a baby or just been in surgery. Tell me a little bit about what it was like for people to visit you after you had a baby. Obviously, you've been through a lot. You're in a lot of pain. Are there times when we need to be sensitive? Like, does this person want visitors right now? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that should be taken into account if it's possible, because obviously getting permission to come comes in handy, because yes, when you're not feeling your best, sometimes you don't feel like entertaining visitors. So I would definitely say that that's probably a good habit to, obviously if the person who is sick is really like incapacitated, then you're really more there to visit the other family members. And so then you could ask them, if you would be a welcome visit or, more of a intrusion. And so, I definitely had some well-meaning people that stopped by, and, I tried to be gracious, but...
Are there times when you're in a situation like that where you just don't want visitors, or you're thinking in the back of your mind, I wish they would leave?
I'm sure there are times where people would feel that way, and I'm sure I had a moment here or there where I wasn't feeling my best and having to put on a smiley face after having no sleep and, all that kind of stuff. But
so do you think it's a loving thing maybe to contact members of the family to say, do you think so-and-so would be up for a visit? Do you think that's just a good best practice?
Yes. Or and even nowadays, there's so many ways to make that contact without necessarily having to be physically in their presence. I mean, nowadays you can mail a card, you can make a phone call, you can send a text, you can just deliver food to their house. There's so many options nowadays to still visit without having to necessarily be in their physical presence. And that's nice too, just to make people aware that you're aware that they're hurting or that they're in a particular, vulnerable time, and that you're thinking of them and praying for them.
I think that's very good. We have had situations in ministry where it's good that the person knows that you stopped by, but if they're not at their best, one of the things that drives a lot of what we do, because it's very important to me, is to save someone from embarrassment. So if they're not at their best, if they're not feeling their best, they're not looking their best, especially if they've just been in the hospital, they haven't had a chance to do their hair or take a shower or something. Sometimes it can be embarrassing for you to go visit someone if they're not in what their opinion is their best presentation of themselves. And so I think sometimes it's a good idea to, if you don't have a way of getting a hold of someone, of just knowing, I'm going to go visit this person in the hospital, at their home, wherever, but knowing that I don't necessarily have to see that person. If they're not prepared for a visitor, I can see the people that are there with them. And that way they know, let's say the person is resting, they're sleeping after a surgery, or God forbid, in situations where we've been around people that are close to death and they might be sleeping a lot. For them to know that you stopped by is a big deal. And for the family to know that you stopped by is a big deal. If God himself comes down to inquire about Abraham, we should do that for our fellow human beings. We need to be, I think, to make the effort to do it, whether that is to send a card or to call or something. There's something about the physical presence, though, too, of showing up. Even if you don't get to see the actual person, as I said, if you just get to see the family, it's good that the person knows that they stopped by. Anything more to add on that, do you think?
I mean, I can't think of anything.
I think we probably covered that. I just think that in this day and age, we really don't have an excuse to not either visit or contact someone especially if they're hurting. Obviously this is a situation where Abraham was in a lot of pain. Recently our son had surgery. It was very nice for, either friends or family or others to inquire about him, to physically stop by. Someone came by with like a basket of goodies, that's always good, to actually make that effort. If we are to bear one another's burdens, and if we are to be that example of the body of Messiah to people, we have to make the effort. Yeah. We can't be lazy about that. So let this inspire you this week. Our prayer is that if you have a loved one that is going through something, even a friend, a close friend, a family member, make the extra effort to make contact. Don't just send a text. Do something. Write a handwritten note. Send a card in the mail so that they get it. Drop by food to their home. This is something that is so important, and it will mean so much to the person. And if we look at it like the Jewish people do, that you're literally, in visiting them, taking 1/60th of their burden, well, I just think we should get 60 people. Maybe not. Maybe that's too big of a crowd. But you know what I mean. If we're literally sort of taking a little bit of their burden, then let's do that. Let's be proactive about that. Thank you for joining us this week for the Rashi Nash, and we hope and pray that this has been a blessing to you. Again, thank you for all your positive comments. It's our joy to be here with you every single week. And so from myself, Pastor Matt, and my wife Kara, we're so glad that you are with us. We are praying for you. Visit that sick person. Visit that person that needs you, and in so doing, you are taking part of their burden upon yourself. Shalom.